Hey guys, if you are checking out the Confidently Creative Summer Series for the very first time, I'm really glad that you're here. If you're joining us after seeing one of the other interviews, also obviously super glad you're here. This series is something I'm really excited to be offering. It's just an opportunity to jump in with different amazing women-owned business owners and just talk about creating mindset shifts to really get you making major moves across your business. Because I know so many of us have all different areas that we're trying to grow in personally, professionally, all sorts of stuff. And I think that mindset sometimes can get in the way. So I wanted to be able to invite just amazing ladies on here to talk to us about different areas of expertise, different advice that they can provide to help us grow in that mindset and really challenge ourselves. And me totally included in that. I have just in the last few interviews I've gotten to record, have learned so much and have challenged myself. And so I invite you to do the same. Today's interview is one that I'm really excited about because we're going to be tackling money mindset with the amazing Audrey Blackburn. And money can get a little tricky. I know, trust me. I know that some of you guys who are watching are like, all right, money mindset, let's do this. It can be a little intimidating when we talk about money. It's one of those things that we tend to get wrapped up in when it comes to emotion behind it or a lot of icky feelings. And I want to get that out of here today. So Audrey is the owner of Blackburn Consulting, an accounting and business consulting practice, as well as the host of the Blackburn Boss podcast. She's just I can't tell you how much energy she has, and her expertise on things is amazing. So I was really excited that she agreed to join us today. Every episode that you're going to see during this series, I want you to feel like you can connect with these women. So if there is something that we go over that you're like, oh, that resonated so much, reach out to Audrey. Don't feel like you can't hit her up over on social media or through email or on her website. Every interview you see, make sure don't be afraid to connect with these awesome ladies. That is what they're here for. And I know that's something that I love whenever I do an interview or something, is being able to really connect with that audience. So I'm going to invite Audrey to introduce herself and just tell us a little bit about you and your business and all that stuff.
Yeah. So hello, and I am Audrey Blackburn, the owner of Blackburn Consulting. So my focus actually is working with women. That's who I prefer to work with. Yes, I work with women-owned businesses, small businesses, and women-led nonprofits. So I work with the nonprofit community heavily. I have a huge background in nonprofit, and I tell women that I work to move them from a place of scarcity to one of abundance. And sometimes that's a scary thing, right? People go scarcity to abundance. And the reason this is so important to me, when I was in my 20s, I was dead flat broke. I had no money, right? So everything was lack and focused on lack. I was always doom and gloom. When's the next, shoe going to drop, because I can't afford stuff. And so when I got into business, I saw that a lot of women business owners operate that way. And I just don't want to see people having to live like that, because it sucks, to live that way. So that's my focus. And how do I do that? I work with people through the tools of bookkeeping, technology, because technology is our friend these days. There's so much it can do, and advisory work. So I say I come alongside you as a partner to help you run your business and make the decisions to do the things you want to do. Right. So, that's why we got into business, was to make money. At least I did. And I think there is this complete disconnect that if we love what we do, that we can't make money at it. A lot of money.
Which is completely false.
Yes, it is completely false. So, so that's a little bit about me. And like Taryn said, I am more than happy to talk with you and would love to connect. So please reach out. Don't feel afraid to reach out.
And I love how you don't work just in one way. You have all these different options on how to support that business and move them forward. And I love that.
Yeah, and I do free consultations. So I'll talk to anybody for 30 minutes for free
Nice.
and let them know more about what I do, but also listen to where they're at and what they need and tell them if that's something I can serve them with. Um, if they're at a point, and for some people this is very sensitive. I don't judge people where you're at because I've been at all those levels. Like, I've only been in business 5 years. So when I started, I struggled like anybody does that first year. You got to make the money. You don't have money to hire the
Nope.
experts, right? And so I tell people, hey, you may not can afford me, but let me show you where some free resources are. So I point people to what they can afford, right? And I don't do that in a judgmental way. It's because I want to help them, because everybody needs to succeed no matter where you're at.
Oh yeah.
And, I used to sit and look at the experts and think, one day I can afford
Like,
this. And it's not about that. And I have stuff that I offer even for free. I do QuickBooks training videos on my website, which I know a lot of people are like, ugh, QuickBooks and numbers. And if that's not your thing, that's okay. My Blackburn Boss podcast that I do is nothing but talking about what entrepreneurs face every day. So, there's a lot of tips in there too. And then we don't always talk about money. In fact, a lot of times I don't.
so depending on where anybody is in their journey and in their mindset dealing with money,
That's
there's
right.
a lot of different resources that you can check out with Audrey, which is great.
Yeah.
So knowing some of that, I'm curious, like, because you work with so many different types of clients and even have conversations where people might be at a lot of different levels in their
Yeah.
entrepreneurship journey, can you share like some of the biggest mindset mistakes or misconceptions that you see business owners battle, like when it comes to managing their money or just talking about their money?
Yeah. So with women, the worst one is I can't charge that. And that being, make up a number. It doesn't matter if it's a tiny number or a massive number. It's wherever they have decided that the market, we always hear this crap, and I'm going to tell you it's crap. Because I had somebody say this to me the other day. I had a CPA who's not practicing now because they've let their license go inactive, which, I know that probably doesn't mean a lot. But they said to me, we were talking about rates, and they were asking me something about what I charged, and I told them, and they said, oh, that's way too high for this area for the market. And I said, no, actually it's about middle of the road. And she was like, what? And I'm like, have you charged people in a long time? And she hadn't. Right. And so, and I told her, I said, I also don't just work in this area. I work all over the US. But, I think we get in this mindset. I've heard this a lot, especially in the triad, Piedmont triad. Well, this area won't bear that rate. The truth of the matter is, people will pay whatever value they perceive. So if you bring something to the table worth 20 bucks, they're not going to pay over 20 bucks, right? Because they're going to look at it and go, that ain't worth it. Or if you bring something to the table and it's worth $100. But if you bring something to the table that's worth thousands, then you can charge a decent rate for it. And I'm not talking about gouging people. I mean, none of us, I
Sure.
think, go into business to gouge people. But that's the worst thing I see is women are afraid to ask for what they want with their pricing. And that's probably the worst disservice we do. I did it when I started business. I what I was charging when I first started my business, I don't even, my smallest customer it doesn't even pay that now. And that's how pitiful it was. And I realized I was going broke, and I went to a conference with a lot of colleagues, and it was a mindset type conference. We were talking nothing about money. We were talking all about money. Profit is what we were talking about specifically, not revenue, but profit. And I got asked, we had to fill out this little questionnaire, and it said, um, what's the one thing stopping you from making the money you want to make right now? And I wrote me. And that's all I wrote.
Which is
And we had to
a
turn them
very
in.
honest answer.
Yep.
Like,
And we had to turn them in. And the leader of the conference came up to me. Now there's like 700 people in the room, said, "Can you come up on stage and let us interview you?" And I said, "Sure. I don't know any of these people." Little did I know it was being taped and everything else, right? But it still didn't stop me. I got up there, and I'll never forget, I got teary-eyed.
Oh, yeah.
I was in my second year of business, and so we started talking about I wasn't charging enough. I knew I wasn't charging enough. I didn't know how to up my prices. Like, I didn't know how to get clients, but I knew what was stopping me was me, because of the things that I told myself, the stories I told myself. And when I got down off that stage, I was surrounded by colleagues who were like giving me books and, and names of books, going, "Go read this, go listen to this podcast, go do this." And it was all this encouragement, like, "You can do this." And so it was a huge shift for me. And I came home and I called two of my top clients that I really loved working with. And I said, "Listen, I have been charging you this and doing this, but this is what I can actually do. This is what I'm good at." And for the first time, I stepped into the role of expert. And I'd always been an expert. I had a master's in accounting. I had 25 years of experience when I stepped on that stage. And I had people going, "Oh my God, I don't have that." And they were charging 10 times what I was. And that spurred me on. So I talked to those two clients. I said, "Here's what I can do." Showed them some packages, right, of things that I could do. And I said, "Here's how much it'll cost." And it was the most money. I mean, like, it was 5 times bigger than anything I could have thought to charge a month. And both of them said yes in less than 24 hours. One said yes right on the spot. And so I tripled my annual revenue in that 2 conversations for that year.
Incredible.
And I was just like, "What?" And so, and it was funny because the conference leader did a monthly call. It was part of a group I was in at the time. And so they asked me to come get on the call, this global call, international, and talk to people about how in the heck did you triple your income in like 3 days time? Because from the time I left the conference to the time I tripled my income was 3 days. And I said, it all started with that question of, what is stopping you from making the money? And I said, it just hit me. And I said, having my colleagues around me, encouraging me, people who
support, like, oh my God.
And people who did what I did, who said, "Yeah, you can charge that." And they didn't tell me, like, charge this and charge. It was just like, here's a range of what you should be charging. And it was just a shock to me, because the bottom of the range was nowhere near what I was charging. And the top of the range was like in my wildest dreams. Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, and I mean, these are successful women that I had gotten to know at this conference that were so down to earth, so willing to share. We had dinner together. I mean, they're lifelong friends now. I still talk to these people. And one of them became my best friend, and she lives in Canada. And I talk to her almost daily. We talk through Voxer, so that we can, talk back and forth, different time zones and all that stuff. But
there's so much value in that. And I think that's something that we sometimes take for granted, or we don't think. And it's like, everyone gets in that comparison trap, like, well, who am I to charge this? Or who am I to, and then you realize, like, oh wait, look around. Like, I love that your answer was me, because a lot of the time we don't realize that in our business. Like, we're the ones setting the prices. We're the ones telling people what our value is, like what we're worth. Like, I had heard a quote, it was a while ago, and I was still at my full-time job, like in corporate America and everything, while doing my business now. And I had heard it, and it just hit me. And it was like, don't let a $50,000 a year job stop you from making $50,000 a month. Like, don't let that, don't have like a false sense of security in whatever job you can't stand just because it's like a decent salary, or like something that you can rely on, because really you might think like, oh, this is the end all be all and I can never make this. And it's like, no, it's up to you at the end of the day. When you have your own business, we're the ones making those prices. We're the ones deciding what that value is.
Yep. And when I left my job, I was making $70,000 a year and had benefits, and walked away from a job and started this business from scratch. scared to death,
It's
knew
terrifying.
nothing. Yeah, knew nothing about running a business. I just honestly, I had prayed about it heavily. Like, what did I need to do next? Because I was miserable, so miserable in my job. And I thought, no, we're not starting a business. That was not one of the answers in the multiple choice. And and so I fought it for a month before I finally said, and I joke about it because those that know me know I'm kind of a rebel when it comes to things, and don't go with the flow. And I kept hearing, you're going to start a business. You're going to start a business. And I said, no, I'm not starting a business.
That's not what my prayer was.
No, I was like, that was not on the list.
No.
And one night, out of sheer frustration, I said, fine, I'll do it. And we'll see how bad it is. Now, that's pretty bad.
Well, I saw like a meme the other day and it said like, don't be surprised when you ask God to like move a mountain if you wake up with a shovel.
Uh-huh.
Like God's like, okay, cool. We're going to work now. Like you have to like do things to get there. So it's funny, like you might be miserable in a situation and everything. And then you're like, wait, business wasn't the answer I was looking for. And look at you now and look at the work you've put in and what you've been able to create.
Well, and I think that's what I hear all these people all the time saying, well, it can be easy and it can be easy, and it can be easy. I mean, we do tend to make things harder than they are, but there is work in building a business. I mean,
a lot of work.
Yes, a lot of work. And there are late nights and crazy things that go on. But for me, it's a trade-off because my 11, almost 12-year-old has her mama all the time, and she's a mama's girl. She'll come in here and plop down in the chair and just start talking, and I'm like, I am working.
Like I got stuff, babe. Like,
I got stuff to do. And
there's the give and take of different things, and that's why not having a business of your own is not for everybody. It really isn't.
No.
But figuring out what's going to work for you, figuring out the kind of business you want, thinking about that value that you're going to offer, that price point, what that money looks like for you. And I'm curious too with Audrey, like when we talk about those misconceptions of pricing, which I know, like just working with creatives and specifically creative women, that is a huge thing. Like that would probably would have been my answer, is like, what is the biggest battle mindset wise? And it's that comparison trap and feeling like you're not worth that money. I'm curious, when you think of that misconception, like where do you think a lot of that stems from with those women that when you hear that mindset shift? Like, is it fear, emotion, intimidation? Like what things do you think make us have that mindset misconception?
I think a lot of it, believe it or not, goes back to when we're kids. It's what we're told growing up. At least it was for me. I'm not saying it is for everyone, but the biggest thing no one ever told me when I started a business was that 99% of it would be me working on me.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with marketing, had nothing to do with the work I did. Yeah, all those things are huge and they have to be done, but me working on me, that's 99% of it. Because if my head isn't right, it doesn't matter what I pull off. It doesn't matter who I hire or anything. It's only going to go so far. And it's amazing how we block ourselves. And so for me, I had to work through, I grew up and I was told I needed to marry well, that I didn't need to go to college. Yeah, that I didn't need to go to college. People said when I was in high school, I would never amount to anything. I worked for a law firm when I was younger, in my 20s. And I remember I went in. Now, I had my son. I have an older son, and I had him when I was 19. I started college when I was 20, paying for it myself. And I started at Forsyth Tech, and I was really excited because I was trying to get into a 4-year college. And I was at this law firm job, and I was telling this lawyer, who was also a CPA, how much I admired him. He worked there at the firm. And I was telling him, how I wanted to get into Wake Forest, because they had this amazing, program. And he looked at me and he said, "You're not Wake material." He said, "You'll never make it at Wake." And I remember just feeling crushed, thinking, oh my God. And then, but there was a part of me, a very tiny part, that was pissed, you know? And so for me, that's what's always driven me, that I've, that little tiny part that was pissed has carried on with me, but I've listened too much to the things that have said, hurtful things. People say stuff that's not, they don't always intend it to be hurtful, but it is, right?
Yeah.
And then some things people do. And I've learned, and I teach this to my daughter, people only say comments to that, like that to you, to keep you in your place. It's a control thing. They're looking, when people say, oh, so and so looks down on me, it's to keep you in your place. You frighten them, right? Your potential frightens them.
Mm-hmm.
And
your value, your worth.
Yep. And I found it now, and I always preface this, because I'm married to a fabulous man who is highly supportive of me, and I know you are too. And that's huge, right? When you have a man behind you backing you. But for many years, men in my life, whether it be family members, friends, boyfriends, whoever, people at work, I have found that men do not like strong women as a whole. And I say that very generalistically, because there's a lot of men out there that love them, right? I'm married to one that does. And I'm very outspoken, very blunt, very much like a man, right? Yeah, like I'm very feminine, but there's a lot of things about my demeanor in business that is very much like how men run business. And I found that when I clash with someone, I'm perceived as a threat. And so now, and it's a mindset thing. Now, instead of like feeling like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me, now I chuckle, because I'm like, oh, you're scared of me. Or, oh, I trigger you. That's a good thing.
Falls in my court.
That's right. And so I think as women, especially, gosh, this is the South, right? Like, women have always been, I hear this all the time, even from other
Audrey. So for those listening, Audrey and I are both located in like the same city, pretty much in North Carolina. So
yes, we are. But I hear this all the time, even now. Be nice. You need to be kind.
Pour some sugar on it, make it a little sweeter.
Yeah. And I was always told when I was younger, the words be kind and be nice were always said to me after I had spoke the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to someone one day, the kindest thing I can do is tell you the truth. And if I don't really care about you. If I sugarcoat it, you don't mean much to me, because that's just me placating, right?
Well, and I think as clients who would work with you want that kind of honesty too. I always tell clients, I'm not going to be your yes person. I'm going to help you and challenge you and do things, but I'm not going to just say yes for the ease of things.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't help anyone grow. And I don't want someone doing that to me.
No.
Essentially, and with their money, the fact that you are so honest and you're blunt and you're able to challenge a client, I feel like that's such a benefit to them, especially because we sometimes need someone to shake things up and help shift that mindset that we have ourselves.
Well, and I tell everybody, we all need to fit with who we work with, right? So I tell people, if you are a type of person that, I'm a big cheerleader, but if you're a type of person that can't deal with blunt and honesty and people making you highly uncomfortable with the questions they ask and just putting you on the spot, then I'm not your girl.
Yeah.
Because that's me. And I ask the hard question. And the very first conversation I have with somebody is, I'm going to ask you questions that you're going to be like, that is none of your business. Well, if it's about your money, yeah, it is. We got to talk about it. Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to that, breaking down those walls and getting comfortable, I know when people are first starting out in business. And so if someone's listening who's just in that first year, second year, getting started,
Mm-hmm.
But even if they've been doing things and they're like, well, I've been in business 5 years, but let's be honest, I haven't really been managing my money. I haven't really been doing the accounting part of things. What are like the bare like minimum? Like what are some things just to get their feet wet and get started? That way they feel like they're more secure and like, okay, I feel confident. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm a real business owner. Like, 'cause
Yeah.
I think that's the thing too. People sometimes are like, well, I mean, yeah, I sell stuff, but I'm not like a business, like I'm not an entrepreneur. And you're like, yes, you are. You need to claim that. So
Yep.
what are those like basic things that you would tell someone, just get started here?
I tell people the very first thing you need to look at is your bottom line, not your revenue. Everybody focuses on, because I had a multi-million dollar client that came to me and said, we make $4.2 million a year. Well, then they hired me. I got involved in their books and I said, you have no profit, none, none. And you're not even getting paid well at all. They were taking these measly little salaries, and I do mean measly. And I see that a lot. So I tell people who first starting out, don't think because somebody's been in business 10, 15, 20 years that they got any money. They may, and they may be doing okay, and they could be doing better. Or they may be a hot mess that is hung together by a thread, because that's what I see
Sure.
99% of the time is people come to me. Most of my clients right now have been in business longer than I have.
Okay.
And they have varying degrees of mess. I tell people everybody's got a mess. Everybody. Even me. I get busy and my bookkeeping gets behind. And I'm like, ask the chick. One of my good friends does my taxes because that's her business. She does taxes, and I took taxes in grad school. I understand it, but I don't want to do them.
You're like,
And
outsource it away.
yes, outsource it. So she and I do a lot of business together. So I said, hey, will you do my taxes? She's like, oh yeah, and of course I pay her, And she files an extension for me every year. And then the day the taxes are due on the extension, Audrey, I need your stuff, honey. I got to have it today.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh.
And so, but she gets it because she does the same thing, and she has all these staff working for her and she still does the same thing. We all do. It's like the plumber who their plumbing doesn't work, right? So I tell people, like, just because somebody looks successful doesn't mean they don't have issues. They just might not have the same issues as you, or maybe they do and you just don't know it. And for me, it's my bookkeeping, but my profit, I got that good. I got my cash flow good. I got my profit good. And that's the part I focus on. And really for me, I mean, the bookkeeping is compliance. And what is compliance? That means you got to file your taxes.
Mm-hmm.
You got to pay sales tax if you do sales tax. You got to, all that stuff. Bookkeeping looks backwards. Okay.
Yeah.
If you want to run a business and grow, you got to look forward.
Yep.
And so the only way you can do that, that's where I really work with my clients is, let's get a hold of your cash flow. Let's get you a reserve. So when you ask, what should you be focusing on? I say pretty much 4 things. One is, do look at revenue,
Mm-hmm.
how much money you got coming in. Look at your expenses. I look at my expenses every quarter. I go through and see, what subscriptions am I no longer using? Because I am bad to sign up for stuff and then forget about it, right? And it's amazing how many hundreds of dollars, especially after you've been in a business a while, you can cut a year in expenses if you'll just stay on top of things. Look at your profit. You need to see, it is so much more powerful and important how much money you have after expenses than the amount of money you ever make. I don't care if you make millions a year, the profit at the end is what's key.
It's what's important.
Yeah, what you get to keep, right?
Yeah.
After taxes and everything. And your pay. If you are a side gig, if you are fourth of a time in it, half time in it, full time in it, I don't care what you're doing. You need to be taking money and getting paid for your services. You're an employee of your business. And that's how you have to look at it.
I love
Right?
that because that's something I know a lot of creatives struggle with. is paying themselves, being wanting to like hoard that money and figuring everything out. And I think also like with all of the 4 things you just mentioned, checking in with yourself, knowing where you stand. Don't be afraid to get started. Some people are like, I'll look at all that later because I'm not really making a lot right now, or I'm not really paying myself right now, or I'm not. You have to just get in the mindset of like, just start looking at the numbers, start tracking, get involved, do a QuickBooks workshop, like understand that there's so many resources out there.
Yeah, anything. I tell people, like, if you don't want to touch QuickBooks, fine. Put it in an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I don't care. Put it on a scratch piece of paper, but it needs to be real numbers. You need to look at it on a regular basis. And it's just like we talk about goals. If you do not set a money goal, it'll never happen.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to me that I can say, and I'm known for setting like outlandish goals with money.
Yeah.
And my husband's like, you go, girl. I hope you do that. And the point for me is not even to make them, but to come somewhere close. Right. Yeah. But I've learned that if I don't set them high, I'll reach them every time. That's the problem. I reach them and then I'm like, I should have set higher, you know? Yeah. And so
accountable, like it gives you something to reach for. Right now, if you're just making money and you're like, well, I got stuff coming in, cool. But then what's your next step? Like you need to know what that looks like. And I know, trust me, I did the same thing in the beginning. I was just like, okay, I'm making some money, but I had no goals. I had no idea what my bottom line was. What did I need coming in? Like I sat and wanted to leave this job, but not once had I been like, what would it actually take financially, rather than just thinking someday, like some random amount that we think about. No, have a literal numeric amount in front of you so you have a goal to get to.
Well, I don't know if you remember the first time you and I met in person and we sat down and had coffee. I said to you, so when are you leaving your job?
Yeah, I was like, oh, I was like, it got hot in here.
Because I saw this woman who was like killing it. And I'm like, you just need to take that leap. Because
it was definitely a confidence thing. And I think, again, mindset, like it felt like this super far away thing for so long that when it was finally tangible, it was like, am I really going to do this? Like, is this what's going to happen? And you know what? It's been wonderful. Like, and it was so much scarier in my head. So remember, check in with yourself. Have people who keep you accountable and ask you difficult questions.
Well, because everything's scarier in our head.
Oh, yeah.
I tell people that all the time. Like, my favorite one is people come to me and go, I bet you've never seen anything this bad. And I'm always like, oh, I've seen worse. And I have. And then, you know, somebody says to me, well, what's the worst you've ever seen? I'm like, you don't want to know. You just really don't want to know. And so, but what I think the big thing is too, big fallacy that I've always heard, it's my first year in business. I'm not going to make money. I call BS on that, because I'll tell you why. When I first got into business, I started May the 28th. So I had roughly 6 months left in the calendar year, right? And I said, whatever I do at the end of the year, I want to have made money.
Nice.
Don't have a dollar figure, because I have no clue what this looks like. I had one client when I started, and I thought, I just want to have made more money than I spent, right? And I want to be able to pay myself. And at the end of the year, I had paid myself in the business. I was a sole proprietor at that time, so it wasn't like I was having to do payroll. I just, took money out of the business. And I remember my first 6 months, my net income was $13,000. And I remember I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Well, that's not a lot of money, but it was to me. And then the next year it was like, okay, my goal this year is just, I'm going to make more money than I did last year. My net income. I did. And net income is, what you got left over after revenue minus expenses. And so then the next year it was like, okay, I just want to make more money than I did last year. Like that alone for me has been like, and then because of that number that you set in your head, well, I'd like to make this. And I have a perfect rule of thumb for women, and this scares them to death when they hear it, but it's true. and any accounting person will agree with me. If you want to make, let's say you had a job and you were making 50,000 and you said, well, I just want to make what I made at my job. I know I don't have the benefits. I know I don't have all this other stuff, but I just want to make 50,000 gross before taxes, right? You've got to make $100,000 to make 50. And people say, how do you come up with that number? Well, you can run in the numbers all day long, but roughly about 50% of your revenue will be your pay if you're running your business very well.
Yeah.
And I say very well, meaning staying on top of expenses, not because this crap, you got to spend money to make money. No, you don't. I had no overhead, hardly zero expenses when I started my business. That's how I made money those first couple of years.
Oh yeah, and you can be as thrifty as you can be.
Yep. And now I have gobs of expenses because I have people working with me. I have lots of technology I pay for, but there's reasons, and I'm constantly evaluating the, return on it. Like, is this a good thing? Is the benefit outweighing the cost? Right. But I also tell people, I love, the thing I do with people, and this one gets people really bad. When we first work together, I'll go through their expenses with them and I'll point out things because I'm an outsider. So I don't have the emotional tie. There's emotion tied in with everything we purchase.
Oh, absolutely.
And I love it when I get to working with people and then there's that emotional, it's like, no, I need that. Well, I'm looking at it from the outside. I know what you do, and that ain't contributing to anything. Like, that's not making your customer service better or your clients happier. And it's like, no. Or, but I spent so much money on it. Well, are you using it? Like, I don't care. I'm the world's worst. Like, my husband will tell you, I don't care if I've spent $5,000 on it. If I'm not using it, I'll get rid of it. And he's like, and then I'm married to the man that hoards everything, right? He's like, no, we got to keep that. You might need it one day. And I'm like, nope, chuck it. Okay. Somebody else can, use it. The one thing I heard about clutter, the greatest quote ever that made so much sense to me. Clutter is decisions you have not made.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. And I was like, when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, my desk is full of decisions I have not made. And
that's so true though. Like,
yeah, but if you start looking at your paper and your money and all these things you ignore or procrastinate, because I'm a big procrastinator, I'll just admit it. If you look at all these things that you're putting off as decisions you have not made that are stopping you, it makes a huge difference. You're like, ooh, I need to deal with that.
So when you help people make those decisions and you're challenging their point of view and their mindset and all these different things and helping, it's funny, I've asked every single interview that we've done in the series the same question at the end. And for you, I feel like everything that you've talked about kind of answers, I think, your take on it.
Yeah.
This whole series is called, Confidently Creative.
Right.
And the different ways that we're pushing ourselves, whether it's in an artistic way and like literally getting our hands dirty in creativity, or our mindset thinking creatively, pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone, all that stuff. How do you define being confidently creative? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so for me, everybody looks at me and says, oh, you're the numbers chick, you're not creative. I hear that all the time. You're not creative. And I buy into it for the longest time. I'm like, I'm not a creative, because I do like crafts and stuff, but I get bored quick. I'm like, start on a craft and never finish it because I'm like, it's too much work. But I realize that I'm very creative. It's just in different ways, right?
Oh, yeah.
So to me, confidently creative is whatever you're creating. For me, I create lots of things with numbers and things, offerings for people. Podcasts are my creative outlet. I love podcasts. And I love recording them. And social media is my creative outlet. That's where I can take pictures and, share my life and talk to people. And, but whatever you're good at, just be confident in doing it.
Yeah.
And for me, I found that the only way that I keep growing is I got to get comfortable with being really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm uncomfortable a lot. There is every single week something makes me uncomfortable. I don't like it. But if I don't like it because it's pushing me, that's different. Then I tell people, if you don't like your business or something that's going on in it, change it.
Yeah, you're
Like,
the one in charge.
yeah, gosh, that took me the longest time to realize, like, even from like the hours you work, because think of the business I'm in. People expect me to be around 8 to 5 or 9 to 5,
Mhm.
right? I don't have to be just because you expect it of me. I'm in charge. So, I think confidently creative is about power, right?
Ooh, I
About
like that.
owning your own
Yeah.
power, and that looks different for everybody, and where they're at. And, but just knowing that you have the power to do whatever you want to do, you're the only one that can change it, you know.
Okay.
And that's the only bad part about when people come to me sometimes and I quickly figure out we're not a good fit. They're not ready to do it. They want somebody to do it for them. I
Mhm.
can't do things for you with money. I can do your bookkeeping. So what? That just makes sure you get your taxes paid and you don't get in trouble and they don't take you to jail or something, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
but the growth part of it, the mindset
yeah.
part, all that, like they have to be willing to do that.
And
So
if I want stuff for you more than you do, we don't need to work together
yeah.
because you're not ready to do the work. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you got to know where you're at,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And you got to be willing to dig in. And that looks uncomfortable at times. I mean, I've looked at my money before and said, "Oh girl, you have let that really get out of control." I mean, but the fact that I can say that to myself and I can say, "Oh, you need to practice what you preach. Get back over there and do this."
Mhm.
And I've got a friend that does the same thing. She and I get on the phone. We get to laughing so hard because the stuff that we tell other people is all stuff we've had to tell ourselves and do it ourselves. We
Remembering, I think that's such an important thing to remember. Like sometimes we, like you said, when people come to you and they're like, well, you've never seen something as bad as this. It's like, just remember, like all of us have been in those places in our businesses, whether we're starting out, whether you've been doing this 20 years, where it is uncomfortable and you do have to check in with yourself. But remember, like, you're not the first person to ever have that insecurity about something.
yeah.
And like you said, like finding your power, like like believing in that power and stuff, being confidently creative, like it's going to lead you to so many things, but no one can do that for you.
Mhm.
No one can do that for me, no one can do that for you. Like it's just not, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So
It doesn't. And um I think too, as women, we worry too much about, well, I need to be humble. I need to, I can't make a lot of money because, wealthy people are selfish, right? It's all whatever script you've told yourself.
yeah.
The best one I heard about money, because remember, I come from a heavy nonprofit background, is you can't be generous if you broke.
Mm.
Because how you going to be giving away a lot of money? Now, I say that and I caveat that, yes, you can give of your time. Yes, you can. There's lots of other ways you can give of yourself
Oh
besides
yeah.
money. But for those of us, that was a goal of mine when I started business. If I had my way in the world, one, I'd live in Hawaii because I want to live on the water, and I'd have this big mansion in Hawaii. But I would be one of those weird people that had a foundation that just randomly surprised people with gift money. Whether it be a nonprofit soup kitchen or an individual business owner, like, oh, that person gave you a grant because they like what you're doing and they wanted to help you along. And I wanted it to be anonymous. Like I'd just be that, or that person that would slip $100 bill to the waitress. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
Like
I've
bringing people
always,
joy and
that sounds so fun to me, just to give away money all day long. And my husband laughs
I
at
love
me
that.
because I've done it. And he's like, you crazy. But I love it. But I can't do that if I don't have the means to do it.
Oh yeah,
Right.
definitely.
So that's why I tell people, having money doesn't mean you're selfish. it just means you can do whatever the heck you want to do.
I think all of us can agree would be amazing to have that mentality
Yes.
of being able to do the things that we want to do.
Yeah.
Audrey, thank you so much for like diving in so deep into the mindset part. I think with money, sometimes we just think like, oh, it's just numbers and calculations and all this stuff. There's so much as creatives, as women, as business owners, as humans, like we have a lot that weighs us down in our mindset, feeling intimidated, not having the confidence and all that when it comes to money, but we don't need to feel that way. There's so much amazingness that comes from knowing our numbers and being able to work on those things. So thank you for sharing your own journey a little bit, diving into what those hurdles are and those barriers that women face. I'm really curious if anyone who's watching is like, I need to get to know Audrey more and I need her to give me the God's honest truth about my money. What is the best way to get in touch with you? Where's the best place to connect with you?
Well, I'm everywhere. I have a website, and my website is Blackburn Consulting NC, like the state of North Carolina.com. And so it's blackburnconsultingnc.com.
Okay.
I am on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, which is Blackburn Consulting. I am on Instagram at Blackburn Boss is my Instagram handle. And I have a podcast too that's called Blackburn Boss Podcast that's like everywhere, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all the stuff. My daughter got really excited one night and ran up here and said, "Mom, you're on Spotify." So that was really cool.
That's
moment.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty awesome. So, and then, you can find ways to email me and all kinds of stuff on my page, all those pages. So, yeah, just reach out.
All right. Well, guys, I would love to invite you to connect with Audrey in one of those ways. If you are like, oh God, that went so fast, head over to the notes within the blog post or at the bottom of the YouTube channel, and you will see Audrey's contact info, as well as some cool stuff that she has going on that you can check out. I do want to invite you guys, if this interview, if you're like, oh my gosh, I needed some of this information and this is great, and I'm curious what other interviews has Taryn done throughout the series, head over to onecraftymiss.com if you're not viewing it on there right now, and just check out some of the other Confidently Creative interviews. We go over different topics each time. It's with a different speaker from a different industry. But don't forget to take time to introduce yourself in the comments. If this is your first time over here, like I want to get to know you. Don't be afraid to reach out to these amazing interviewees. Like Audrey, like she's just amazing. She will like pour so much into you. So yeah, guys, make sure you connect. Don't be afraid. Check out the other interviews that are going on. But I hope you have a great summer and keep challenging yourself to just push yourself when it comes to that mindset and those things that are holding us back, because there's so many amazing areas of growth we could be seeing in our business and those giant moves we could be making. But we just need those reminders that it's okay to push past that stuff that might be holding us back. So check out the other interviews and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much, Audrey.
Thank you.